Sister Jennifer and I went to Lake Havasu for spring break this year. I was in my last year of college and I really needed a break. Jennifer planned everything out. She rented a Lexus so we wouldn't have to drive our own cars through the desert, and she picked out a hotel right on the lake. Our first day there was pretty great. We spent most of the time hanging out by the pool, which was a lot warmer than the cold lake water. Jennifer got a little drunk, so by the end of the night she was kind of embarrassing herself. I think the concierge noticed because she was glaring at us through the lobby window. Just before dinner time, Jennifer met another tourist, a really handsome ginger guy. She left with him to have dinner in one of the beachside restaurants. I was not invited. I ended up eating room service alone in our room and waiting for Jennifer to come back. She never did. When I woke up the next morning, I assumed that my sister was hooking up with that red-haired guy. Wouldn't be the first time she ditched me during a vacation. Just in case, though, I decided to go downstairs and ask the concierge if she'd seen Jennifer. I remembered how she glared at us the night before, so I was positive that she'd remember my sister. I found the woman standing behind the front desk in the lobby. Her name tag said Maria. I politely introduced myself, but she already knew exactly who I was. "You're the sister of that loud, drunk woman, aren't you?" She wasn't wrong. "Yes," I told her, "but I'm worried that she's gone missing. She met this red-haired guy and..." Maria's eyes widened in horror. She asked if the red-haired man had a snake tattoo on his arm. I nodded. He definitely had a snake tattoo. "Oh my God," she said. "You have to come with me." Before I could ask any questions, Maria abandoned her desk, grabbed my wrist, and raced through the lobby and into the parking lot. It all happened so suddenly, I didn't get a chance to find out what was going on. All I knew was that this woman thought my sister was in trouble. We got into her Jeep, and she sped onto the highway. As she drove, she explained that the man who took my sister was extremely dangerous. For months now, he'd been kidnapping tourists and taking them into the desert, where no one ever saw them again. Maria said that the man had already taken several guests from her hotel, though there was never enough evidence to arrest him. He was barred from the property, but apparently he snuck back in. Thankfully, Maria knew exactly where the man was hiding. If we were lucky, we'd get there before anything happened to Jennifer. I took out my phone to call 911, but Maria told me to stop. She said we could handle things on our own. I didn't like that idea, but everything was happening so fast that I didn't argue with her. She pulled her Jeep up to a rundown trailer in an isolated area off the main road. It didn't look like anyone lived here. Maria got out of the car and walked straight to the trailer's door. She kicked it open and barged inside. "Hey!" she shouted angrily. Honestly, she was acting like Maria Connor from the Terminator movies, all tough and angry. I was glad I had her on my side. I followed her inside the trailer. The ginger man stood frozen in the kitchen area, obviously scared by our sudden arrival. I didn't do anything," he said. He had his hands above his head. "Where is she?" Maria demanded. "In the back," he muttered. "I'll show you." With his hands still raised over his head, he walked through the trailer toward a door. Maria and I followed him. Slowly, he pushed open the door, revealing only darkness on the other side. It looked like a wooden shed that the man had built onto the back of the trailer. I couldn't see Jennifer. "She's in there," the ginger man said. "Look for yourself." I really wanted to see my sister, but I didn't trust this man for a second. "Bring her out!" I demanded. Maria walked around the man and wrapped something tight around his hands. I think she used a handkerchief. "It's okay," she told me. "Just go inside and check. I'll watch him." Oh, thank God Maria was here. I pulled out my phone and turned on flashlight mode. I started to take it with me, but Maria told me to let her hold it with one hand so I could see better. As she held up the light behind me, I walked inside. The room was so dark, but I could see Jennifer lying in the corner. Her hair was in her face. I I couldn't tell if she was alive. I ran to her and shook her shoulder, but then the whole room turned black before I could see her face. The door had closed behind me. "Maria!" I screamed. "Let me out of here!" I could hear my sister moaning. She was still alive, but barely conscious. "Sorry," Maria said through the door, "but I can't let you mess things up for my brother." I couldn't believe it. The man was her brother. They were a team. Through the door, she explained that her brother only kidnapped loud, obnoxious tourists that traveled here alone. He thought Jennifer was alone because that was what she'd told him back at the pool. He didn't expect someone like me to come looking for her. "What are you going to do with us?" The man started to laugh horribly. He said they were going to keep us in there until we died. No one would ever find us. "You shouldn't have given me your phone," Maria taunted. I held Jennifer. She was covered in sweat from spending so long in this room. Her arms were trembling. Outside the door, I could hear the siblings talk casually. It sounded like they were congratulating each other, like they were fishermen and we were fish. What they didn't know was that I had a second phone in my back pocket. I always kept it for emergencies. I dialed 911 as soon as they left the trailer. In less than 30 minutes, we were rescued. Jennifer is still recovering in the hospital, but it looks like she's going to be okay.
Success as a salesman comes at a cost. Everybody who has sold anything in life and made a career for themselves out of selling knows that at the soul of the business, when all is said and done, there would be a fundamentally changed person in you than what you had started out with. For some people, it is the process that changes them. For others like me, it is a singular event. And my event came on a cold day in December 1984. I remember the rush I had felt that day. True success is a drug so many people never earn in their lives. Maybe athletes at the tail end of the game, with the crowd roaring their names, would feel something so rare repeatedly. It was good. The walls of the hotel I was at had a vibrant liveliness to them when I sang in the bathroom. It was as though I was singing to an audience of millions of people. I was that excited. I hadn't had any sleep in about 48 hours since I had gotten the news of my nomination, and the words still rang in my ears. Salesman of the Year. It was hard to believe. There I was, alive at that moment. My flight to Michigan had been 60 minutes long, but it felt longer. My body ached from the 8-hour trip I had taken the previous day to drop off my daughter at my parents', who lived in a different city. I managed myself out of the bathroom when I was sufficiently washed. Salesman of the Year. I mouthed to myself as I lazed on the cozy sheets. I tried to imagine the fun fare, but nothing in my mind could conjure the comparing of the feeling of utter bliss that was running through me. As an intern salesman almost a decade ago, I had such dreams of such days, and I had read all the papers of the awards of Albert Richardson Hall and how the career of each of the winners had grown to become iconic. Callum, my boss at the car dealership, would be present. He sent messages of how proud he was of me. I was doing good work at one of the leading companies in the country, and it was no easy feat. I tried to imagine the faces they would wear when I win. It was not until late into the night that I was able to get some sleep in preparation for what would be the biggest day in my career. A brash, mindless jabbing on the door woke me up from the depths of my slumber way before dawn. The noise of hands beating on the door was so loud it seeped into my dream and seemingly pulled me out. My head banged from the forceful awakening, and I jerked upright on my bed. "Who the hell is that?" I shouted at the door. Then there was no noise. It was quiet, and I was simmering with rage. I waited for an answer, but when there was none, still, I pushed myself out of bed and walked straight to the door. I had a sense that something was awry. The lack of tension intimidated me of safety within the room, but The off chance that someone was trying to save me from a disaster pushed me back to the locks. The door yawned as I pulled it back and waited for the stranger to speak. He was dressed in a long brown coat. His shirt was pristine white, and they glowed under the reflection of the light overhead. From his chest pocket to his hip, a golden chain accentuated a slender frame. His skin was ashen and his eyes were sunken. The bags under each eye had a black hue of swelling. He had a dark presence that was not easily perceivable, but unraveled when he lingered. I sensed something menacing was about to happen, but I didn't know for sure, so I was careful not to startle myself needlessly, even though I had started to panic. "Mark Thorpe?" he inquired, one brow jumping over the other to register a feature. I straightened my body and cleared my throat and said that it was indeed me. He sighed, and I saw a smile drift past his face. It was gone before I registered what I was seeing. He dipped his hand into the side as one would do to fetch something, but what came out changed both of our lives. A knife. It was puzzling at first. It crippled my senses, and I simply stood there, watching it happen. He retrieved the knife without missing a beat, swiftly stabbing at me. My mind processed the pain slowly, but it hurt whenever he cut me. His knife dipped into me. I was bleeding from every part of my body before realizing that I had been shoved back into the room. I saw Death's gaze into mine, and I cowered. My bowels turned loose, and I let it rip. My body burned from the inside as I watched myself fade into oblivion, wondering what I had done to deserve such a cruel and unexpected end. "Your kind took her away from me, Mark. All we did was trust you," he said in a tone so strong. "She died in a crash 3 years ago because of one of the cars you sold her, telling her it was in good condition when it wasn't. I tried to protest, wondering why I had to be killed for a matter that was no business of mine. He lost his wife to a bad salesman, and it turned him into a serial killer." He explained to me, each line of his explanation more potent as the last. The deception that led to the accident had scarred him deeply because his wife had been pregnant with their child. "You know how many car salesmen I had to kill to atone for her death?" he asked and answered before I could speak. 23. And they all begged like pathetic wretches. I couldn't beg. I couldn't speak. The blood from my gut clogged my mouth, but I saw him pull out a gun. I was surely dead. But in a surprising move, he turned the gun on his own head and fired. Then it all went black, as if my most terrifying moments ended. When my eyes opened, I half expected to be in some afterlife dimension. But my family was by my side, assuring me that I had survived the deranged killer, and the gunshot had alerted the hotel staff, and they called the police. I survived the ordeal, but I knew I could not continue at that job, for a fear of maybe another killer might find me, and I would not survive their attacks.
Last summer, my boyfriend Miguel and I planned our very first camping trip as a couple. I was a lot more outdoorsy than him, so I was a little surprised when he suggested the trip. I was even more surprised when he bought all this expensive camping equipment for us to use. He seemed really excited about it. Everything was all set for the trip, but on the morning we were supposed to leave, we got into a really big argument. Miguel was upset that I had lunch with my ex-boyfriend Jacob. I didn't think it was a big deal because Jacob and I had dated a decade ago and we'd both moved on to other relationships. He forced me to promise never to see Jacob again. I told him he was overreacting. Things spiraled from there and I ended up storming off. In a fit of anger, I decided to go on the trip by myself. I took all of our camping stuff and left. Miguel kept calling me over and over, but I refused to answer. I listened to his messages and none of them were apologies. Instead, he kept begging me to come back. He made up some excuse that Jacob was dangerous, but I knew that he was only trying to justify himself. Eventually, I got to the campgrounds, unloaded my stuff, and pitched my tent. As I sat there alone, I started to have regrets. Even though I knew Miguel was being pig-headed, I still missed him. Deep down, I didn't want to camp alone. As I set up a campfire, I saw that Miguel had left one more voice message. I listened to it. Miguel finally apologized for shouting at me. He said that he was going to drive over and meet me in the campgrounds, but his tires were slashed. He wasn't sure, but he thought that Jacob had done it. He said he was worried for my safety and begged me to come home. For the first time, I felt scared. I didn't think my ex would do something like that, but Miguel sounded so serious. And if Jacob hadn't slashed his tires, then who did? The woods were really dark and quiet. I couldn't stay here anymore. I put out the fire and started packing up all my stuff. Just as I disassembled my tent, someone walked out of the darkness. It was Jacob. "What are you doing here?" I asked. He said that he was here to protect me. I didn't trust him. I knew he slashed my boyfriend's tires. He stepped forward, reaching his hands out. He acted like he wanted to comfort me. Without thinking, I punched him in the face and ran off. I left all my stuff behind. I could hear his footsteps as he ran after me, so I sped up. I ran so fast through the dark forest that I got hopelessly lost. I thought I was running back to the parking lot, but I ended up all turned around. Behind me, Jacob kept screaming for me to stop. I couldn't see him, but I knew that he was close. I had to keep going. Somehow, I made it back to the parking lot. As soon as I saw my car, I felt relief wash over me. I ran to the door and reached into my pocket for the keys, but I didn't have them. I'd left them back at the campsite. By then, Jacob had reached me. His expression was blank. "What do you want?" I screamed. Before he could explain, another car pulled into the parking lot. I didn't recognize the car, but I recognized the person in the driver's seat. It was Miguel. "Get in!" he shouted. While Jacob screamed for me to stop, I raced around the car and got inside. Even though I was trembling, I buckled my seatbelt and we drove off. Jacob frantically waved at us from the parking lot, but I couldn't hear what he was saying. We drove in silence for a long time. I noticed that the car was filled with empty fast food bags and there was a car seat in the back. Clearly, this wasn't a rental. Had Miguel stolen it in his hurry to rescue me? "What's going on?" I finally asked him. He kept his eyes on the road. "Jacob was right," he muttered. "He was trying to protect you." Miguel explained that he had planned to kill me during our camping trip and make it seem like an accident. Somehow Jacob had found out and tried to stop him. "You should have listened to him." "But why?" I asked. "I thought we were happy." He didn't answer. I reached for the door handle, ready to jump out of the car, but Miguel sped up. He was barreling through the forest road, and if I jumped out, I'd probably die. I was trapped. Headlights shined behind us. A truck was following us, getting closer and closer. Miguel sped up even more. I looked through the back window. I wasn't sure, but it looked like Jacob was in the truck. He was still trying to save me. He just won't stop, will he? The truck was insanely fast. It got right behind us. Jacob honked the horn. "Pull over," I told Miguel. That just made him drive even faster. My whole body shook as the truck rammed into us. Miguel gripped the steering wheel tightly, but he was losing control. Our car started to careen off the road. We were about to crash into a tree. In the split second that it took to skid off the road, I reached toward Miguel's side and pressed his seatbelt button, releasing it. Then we crashed. My seatbelt held me in place and the airbag slammed into me. Pain shot through my whole body. I think my ribs were broken. When I pushed the airbag away, I didn't see Miguel in the driver's seat. Without his seatbelt to protect him, his body had flown through the windshield and smacked against the tree. I could see his bloody, twisted body through the broken windshield. He was dead. Jacob appeared at the window next to me. He struggled to open the door and pull me out of the wreckage. "Thank you," I muttered, and then I passed out from the pain. To this day, I still don't know why Miguel wanted to kill me. I guess I'll never know. Jacob and I are still friends. I owe him my life. We're not dating yet, but there's a definite connection between us. He's a good guy, but after Miguel, I'm still not ready to trust anyone. It was the summer of 2009, and I had just finished college, a bachelor in business administration, and for all intents and purposes was ready to take on the world, or whatever crap adults like to sell us so we'd comply. Except I wasn't ready to do that yet. My father had a landscaping company passed down to him by his father, and I grew up with the expectation that I would be the next successor of the business. Starting from the age of 10, my father taught me about the job, giving me small tasks to complete. The majority of my school breaks were spent knee-deep in a patch of soil. I didn't mind it most of the time, but my heart wasn't in it. Once graduation came and went, however, my father started getting impatient when I didn't immediately start working on the family business. But for once in my life, I knew what I wanted to do, to take a break and experience the world on my own, something I didn't get to do before. I had my granddad's old Ford Explorer, $2,000 in cash, a backpack with camping gear, and no clear destination in sight. For the first 6 months, I drove across the country, stopping to camp on the most amazing remote locations, meeting new and interesting people, and getting odd jobs here and there as a preemptive measure in case money got tight, or something bad happened. 8 months in, I had crossed thousands of miles, visited around 26 states, and decided it was time to end my road trip. It would take a little over a week to make the way back home to Oregon, but that was on me for not taking proper care of my car throughout the journey. The old broad had died on me many times over the many months I'd been away. I took a detour on the 83 that was supposed to get me to Dupree faster, but ended up getting me pretty lost. As I drove, my eyes were trained on the surroundings, searching for anything that could get me back on track, and that was my second mistake. Out of nowhere, something big crossed in front of my truck, too fast for me to fully dodge it. I felt the impact of the thing hitting the side of the car, just as the momentum caused it to tumble over, pinning the driver's side to the ground. Ah! After getting my bearings, I squeezed through the broken window of the passenger seat to get out. If I had to bet on anything, it would be on my truck being completely unsalvageable. As I finished gathering my backpack and some belongings from inside the car, a guttural screech came from somewhere behind me. The thing that ran in front of the truck, my mind supplied. Weapons-wise, all I had with me was a broken switchblade and a Swiss Army knife, so hopefully the creature wasn't looking for a fight. My prayers were soon answered when I discovered the source of the noise. A badly injured but huge mountain lion tossed on the side of the road, and by the looks of it, he wasn't going to last much longer. So I ventured closer, noticing how the creature's breathing patterns were shallower and slower as the minutes passed by. There was a lot of blood pooling on the floor around his back, yet very little on my car. Upon closer inspection, I noticed some sort of gash wound in one of his paws, maybe from a fight with another animal. Just as his breathing came to a stop, a ruffle of leaves nearby called my attention. I looked back and saw a dog, hidden behind some bushes, peeking at me. Us. He was big and looked like one of the black and brown police dogs. And then his ears went up as if he heard something and immediately disappeared in between the bushes. Whatever. I had bigger worries ahead of me. Wounded, stranded, and alone, there was no other choice than camping for the night. Lucky for me, there was a relatively bare portion of the woods about a quarter of a mile ahead that would be a perfect place to set my tent. I had to work fast, but I got my tent up just as the sun died down on the horizon. I was so exhausted that I didn't even remember falling asleep. I blinked my eyes open however many hours later to the sound of broken twigs right outside my tent. I ignored it at first, still too tired to care. Besides, I was used to camping alone in the middle of nowhere, and knew that there were plenty of noises to be heard in the woods, especially at night. But not even a minute later, the noise happened again, and something about it didn't sit right. Thinking back to the mountain lion and the weird dog, I was immediately very much awake, ears glued to the fabric of the tent, searching for any trace of the sound. There it was again. The movements were slow, circling my campsite, but getting closer and closer to the center. Did animals walk around in circles like that? It felt too deliberate to be an animal. Still, I kept paying attention to the noises, the idea of sleep long gone. I was certain they were footsteps, heavy ones too, way too heavy for a mere mountain lion or dog. Oh, it's gotta be a bear, I thought. I touched the darkness around me until I found my switchblade and clutched it in my hand. What I didn't expect was to hear a man's voice outside my tent. "Are you the owner of that pickup truck? Are you hurt?" Immediately, I felt relieved, putting the blade away inside my pocket. If this man got here, he probably had a car. I could get a ride with him to the nearest bus station and head back home. I got out of the tent and was immediately blinded by the man's bright flashlight aimed at me. His body was merely a large outline in the dark. "Are you hurt, son?" "No, sir," I said, trying to shield my eyes with my forearm. "It was a close call, but I got out unharmed." "Can't have that now, can we?" "What?" I realized what was happening 2 seconds too late, as something lunged at me, sinking sharp teeth on my ankle and twisting it around. The pain was so intense, I immediately fell to the ground as the thing chewed on my flesh. It was the dog from before. The man whistled and the dog immediately let go, running to his side. "Enough, Bear," he said, roughly patting the dog's head after offering a treat taken from his pocket. "Now, son, here's how things are gonna work. You made a mess of my kill earlier today. Now I have nothing to hunt, and Bear has nothing to eat." "What? Did you want money? Is that it? It's in the tent, man. You can..." "You aren't listening to me, boy. I don't want your damn money." "What do you want?" The noise of his shotgun cocking echoed in the dark of the forest, answering my question. With a wicked smile, he told me he would count until 100, and after that, it was game on. The game being him hunting me. The man started counting, and I found myself backing away from him and the dog. I didn't know where to go or what to do. I could barely even see anything in front of me, and was probably leaving a trail of blood behind me too. Not that it mattered anyway. He had a source of light when I had none. All the odds were stacked against me. Hiding wasn't an option in the long run, but I couldn't keep walking much further either. Between the throbbing pain from my injured leg and my rapidly dying resolve, panic clawed at my insides. This crazy man was going to kill me. The countdown came to an end, and I still had no idea what to do. Would he come after me himself, or would he send the dog to do his dirty work? Either way, I was dead. From afar, I heard him psyching the dog up, urging him to find me. "Bear, are you hungry, boy? Go! Go!" I summoned all the strength I had left and kept walking. Masking my scent wasn't a possibility, especially if he had been trained to aid hunts, so my only chance was to tire him out. Easier said than done, of course, since I was the injured party. I kept walking, one foot after the other, a mix of limping and running, suddenly realizing I had been slowly and steadily going up an incline. But soon enough, there was no more ground to cover. I was faced with a steep hill in front of me, and Bear behind me. He barked angrily at me, and the shock made me stumble back, falling to the ground. The dog slowly approached me, so I took the blade from my pocket, ready to do whatever it took to survive. Looking at him up close, it was evident that he had been starved. He was still big, but most of the bulk came from his long pelt, not by any actual weight. The switchblade trembled in my hand as I pointed it at the dog. As much as I wanted to defend myself, I couldn't find the strength to actually do it. Bear was as much of a victim as I was. Damn, I can't kill him. Resigned to my fate, I dropped the switchblade and closed my eyes, not wanting to see the attack coming. I heard Bear snarling and felt a strong gust of wind beside me when he lunged at something else. By a sheer miracle, a tiny rabbit hiding in a bush behind me called his attention, and urged by hunger, he chose to attack it instead. He was completely engrossed in eating, and that would be my only chance to lure the man closer. I let out a loud, pained screech, hoping to goad him into thinking Bear had me. and it worked like a charm. I could hear him coming up the incline, panting and clearly exhausted by it, loudly congratulating the dog for his efforts. So I pulled out the switchblade again, hid behind a thick tree near where Bear was, and waited for him to approach. "You got him good, didn't you, boy?" As soon as his body passed by the tree, I jammed the sharp blade on the back of his heel and then pulled back, completely slicing the tendon. The man went down screaming bloody murder, gripping the wound. Surprise, or maybe pain, made him let go of the shotgun for just as long as it took me to grab it from him. Immediately pointed at his face, resolute in shooting the man point blank. "Hey kid, we don't have to do that, okay?" he pleaded, lifting both hands at me in surrender. There's money in the car down the road." "I don't want your money. Wasn't that what you said to me?" I cocked the gun, mimicking his move, ready to shoot him. But another idea came to mind. Before he knew what was happening, I sliced him deep in the side of the stomach and took the small pouch of treats he had inside his pocket. By that time, Bear was done with his appetizer. I threw a treat at him to call his attention. He quickly found it and ate it with gusto. Then I shoved a few of them inside the open wound of the man's stomach as he screamed and thrashed in agony. "Are you hungry, boy?" I asked, before tossing treats beside the man as a trail. And Bear quickly followed. I wasn't that much of a sadist to stick around, but as I walked away, all I could hear were the man's desperate screams echoing through the woods. Yeah, I was done with camping for good. Maybe landscaping wasn't that bad after all.
My boyfriend Robert booked us a really nice Airbnb for our anniversary. It was a ranch house just outside Palm Springs, and it was gorgeous. I'm not the biggest fan of desert environments, but I'm much more of a beach person myself. Robert seemed adamant that this would be the perfect spot, and I wasn't going to argue. The house itself wasn't that big, but the property was enormous. It even had a barn in the back, plus a winding nature trail that wrapped around most of the property. It was the kind of place that people would rent out for weddings or other big events. I didn't know how Robert could afford it. A woman named Nadia helped us out. Her family owned the property. I got a good feeling about her at first. She seemed pretty friendly. She actually looked a lot like me too. The same long brown hair, same body type, and even slightly raspy voice sounding. As she was giving us a tour, I noticed her and Robert were exchanging very conspiratorial looking glances. I asked them if they knew each other, but Robert assured me that they only communicated through the Airbnb messenger. I really didn't believe them, but I wasn't the suspicious type. I knew that they were hiding something, just didn't know what. Just in case, I asked Robert if I could borrow his phone to look at the Airbnb messages. He got extremely defensive and told me no. I didn't want to get into an argument so soon after we checked in, so I dropped the subject. We settled in and I started to unpack. I was putting away all my clothes in the bedroom closet when I realized that Robert was no longer in the room. I wasn't sure where he'd run off to. I checked the other rooms, but he wasn't there. Then I looked through the living room window and saw him outside with Nadia. They were just off the porch in the middle of a serious conversation, and it looked like they had no idea that I was watching them. I had to find out what they were talking about. I went to the window and hid just below it so I could hear them better. I couldn't make out full sentences, but I heard enough to know that they were planning something tonight in the barn. I almost started to hyperventilate. I knew that my boyfriend would never cheat on me, especially on our anniversary, but it sure seemed like he was. He came back inside pretty quickly after that, but I didn't say anything. We went to bed that night, and I only pretended to sleep. I just waited with my eyes closed. After about an hour, I felt the bed move. Robert was very quietly climbing out of the bed and sneaking toward the front door. I didn't move until I saw the front door close. Then I raced towards the window and stared out of the darkness. I saw Robert walking through the grass. He was heading straight toward the barn. Furious, I slid on my night shoes and went outside too. I could see lights inside the barn. As I got closer, I could hear Robert and Nadia's voices over some soft romantic music. I didn't bother trying to be quiet. I wanted them to hear me. The barn door was halfway open. I could see them together inside the barn, surrounded with hanging Christmas lights. The whole place looked really romantic. I was so angry that Robert was there with someone else on our anniversary. Just as I reached the barn door, Nadia came out. She was smiling, but the smile disappeared when she ran into me. You were supposed to be asleep, she said nervously. Are you sleeping with my boyfriend? I demanded. Of course not. Then what are you two doing in there? She wouldn't answer. I kept demanding to know what was going on, but she wouldn't even look me in the eyes. She just mumbled that she couldn't tell me. Things escalated pretty quickly after that. I shoved her and she fell into the dirt. She jumped up and slammed her elbow into me. It was the craziest fight I'd gotten into in my life, but I'd never felt one like this. I'd never been this angry. This woman was sleeping with my boyfriend, even though she knew it was our anniversary, and now she was biting me instead of apologizing. She just tripped me onto the ground and was about to kick me in the side, but before she could do that, I grabbed her foot and twisted it. She lost her balance and fell. Then there was this horrible crunch. In the fall, her head slammed against a tree stump. Blood fell out of both her eyes, and her tongue flopped out of her mouth. She was dead. Finally, Robert came out of the barn. He saw me and gasped. When he saw Nadia's dead body, he literally couldn't breathe. He started to have a panic attack. It wasn't my fault, I said. We were fighting and she fell. Robert looked at Nadia's bloody face. This did not look like an accident. Why were you fighting? He asked. Because I found out that you two were sleeping together. His shock at my answer was enough to pull him out of his panic attack. He said that I misunderstood everything. Then he demanded that I follow him into the barn. I was afraid of what he would do to me after finding his mistress dead, but I didn't have any other choice. I followed him into the barn. The whole place was beautifully decorated. It looked like the barn from a Hallmark movie. Nadia was helping me decorate this place, so it would be perfect for our anniversary tomorrow. For when I do this, he got down on one knee. You were going to propose? I screamed. That was the plan, until you murdered the party planner. The reality of everything finally sank in. There was a dead body at our Airbnb. Even though I didn't mean to murder her, she was still dead. Her corpse was right outside the barn. The poor victim of a misunderstanding. What are we going to do? I asked. It depends on your answer to my proposal, he answered. His face was blank. For a second, I didn't understand what he wanted me to say. I stepped forward and told him, Yes, Robert, I'd love to marry you. Then I'll gladly help you bury the body and make up an alibi. With the Christmas lights shining all around us, Robert wrapped his arms around me and gave me the best kiss of my life. We could have held each other forever, but we had a body to bury. This whole experience happened 5 years ago. Robert and I have been married ever since, and Nadia's body was never found.
We're finally here. I put my phone down and peered out of the car window, a frown furrowing between my brows. This is it? I said, unable to stop the disappointment from seeping into my tone. When my parents had told my brother and me we were going on an exciting rural getaway, I'd expected more than simply a random cabin in the middle of nowhere. For the past 20 minutes, all I'd glimpsed were trees and dusty roads that didn't look like they'd been used in years. Beside me, John, my younger brother, seemed equally unbothered by the structure, returning his attention to the comic he was reading. "Oh, don't be like that," our mother said from the front seat, twisting round to look at us. It'll be fun. A full disconnect from the outside world. I looked down at my phone's signal. Of course, there wasn't one. I let out a sigh. Yay, sounds amazing, I said sarcastically, unclipping my seatbelt and pushing open the car door. As I stepped out, I immediately noticed how quiet it was. Nothing but the rustle of trees as the wind blew through the leaves. I had to admit, it was very peaceful compared to the usual city sounds, but it wasn't enough to make me excited about staying here. The rest of them also climbed out of the car, and we all carried our luggage to the cabin we'd rented off Airbnb for the next 4 nights. Inside was exactly how I had been expecting it to look. Rustic, rural, and cozy. Everything was wooden and furnished with rugs and tapestries, with a big log fire in the center of the living space. With no internet, our parents had insisted on bringing board games and books to keep us entertained. I wasn't averse to a good board game, but the thought of spending 4 nights in such close quarters with the rest of my family wasn't the most appealing thing to a teenage girl. After putting our stuff away in our respective rooms, we all gathered in the living room for our first family activity. All right, Cluedo or Battleship first? I groaned outwardly. Those games are so old. Can't we play something new for a change? I said, sitting down heavily next to my brother on the sofa. He still had his nose in a comic book, barely paying attention to the rest of us. Well, I guess we could, our father said, scratching his cheek sheepishly. I just thought we'd start with a classic, something we can all play. I sighed at his obvious disappointment. All right, Cluedo it is then. As he began to set up the board, a strange smell caught my attention. It was something chemically that made my nose hurt when I breathed in too deep, but I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. What's that smell? I asked, glancing around. It was so strong it was starting to make my eyes water. I could see the others getting affected by it too, covering their noses with their hands. What is that? Mom said, squinting her eyes as tears began to stream down her cheeks. God, it's awful! I'm starting to feel dizzy, John whimpered from beside me. So was I. Dark spots began to cloud the corners of my vision, and before I knew what was happening, the ground seemed to give way beneath me, and I collapsed into darkness. When I came to, my head was pounding, and my cheeks were sticky with dried tears. What the hell was going on? I sat up, blinking away the grogginess, and looked around. I was no longer in the cabin. The walls were bare and white, and there was no furniture. No windows or doors either, just white walls like some kind of prison. John was still unconscious beside me, but our parents were just starting to stir across the room. Mom? Dad, what's going on? I asked breathlessly, scrambling over to them. Dad shook off his disorientation first, looking around in a frenzied state. Where the hell are we? I don't know, I said, my eyes widening in panic. What was going on? Why were there no doors or windows? Were we trapped here? I just woke up here. I don't know what's happening. Someone played us, Mom said, groaning softly as she raked her hair out of her face. That smell from before. It must have been some kind of gas. I swallowed, my throat feeling so tight I could barely breathe. Why would someone do this? Are they going to hurt us? I don't know. Mom? Dad? Julie? I heard John's groggy voice from behind me and rushed over to see if he was okay. Luckily, nobody seemed to be hurt. So far, we'd just been rendered unconscious and transported to a room from which we couldn't escape. Once we'd all regained our senses, we took a better look at the room. There has to be some way out of here, Dad growled, slamming his fists against the white walls. How else did we get in here otherwise? I nodded. If we got in here, there must be a way out. It was just hidden somewhere, but we scoured the entire room and found nothing. That's when John noticed something, drawing our attention over to the corner wall. "What's that?" he asked, pointing up toward the ceiling. A small black dot was embedded in the wall. As soon as he saw it, our dad's nostrils flared in anger. "It's a camera," he said, marching up to it. Hey, I know you're watching. What the hell is going on? Let us out of here." From somewhere unseen, a crackly voice started to speak. "Nice of you to finally wake up." My dad's lip curled in anger as he looked toward the camera. "Who the hell are you? What's going on?" "What you're experiencing right now is what my daughter experiences every second of the day," the voice answered, taut with emotion. "Locked inside her own body, unable to move, unable to talk, trapped inside her own mind, unable to cry for help. I'm sorry about your daughter, but what the hell does it have to do with us?" "It has everything to do with you. You have no idea who I am, do you?" My dad's shoulders began to tremble with anger. "No, we sure as hell do not. Just let us out of here." Tracy Ellis is the name of my daughter. All at once, it was like the air got sucked out of the room. My dad's demeanor completely changed, the color draining from his face, the tension releasing from his shoulders, leaving him pale and hollow-looking. "Tracy," he whispered, shock clouding his features. The three of us looked at him in confusion. "Do you know who he's talking about?" my mom asked, her eyes widening at her husband. He didn't answer. "So that's what this is all about." "Indeed it is. I'm glad you finally understand. I want revenge. Revenge for what you did to my daughter." "Dad, what is he talking about?" I asked, my voice trembling. 2 years ago, I was in a car accident. I managed to get away without harm, but the other car wasn't so lucky. The driver and his teenage daughter were injured badly. Her name was Tracy Ellis." "No way! Why didn't you tell me any of this?" Mom spun her face to her husband, her jaw trembling in disbelief. "I was racked with guilt for what I'd done. Of course I couldn't tell anyone about it." The voice started speaking again, full of bitterness. "You ruined my daughter's life. Now I'm going to show you what it feels like." "No," Dad gasped, choking on his own words. "No, you can't. It was an accident. I never meant to hurt her. I'm so sorry. Please don't hurt my family. Take me instead. I don't care if you kill me. Just don't hurt my family." The voice was quiet for a long moment before a cruel, calloused laugh poured into the room, making me wince. "Fine. As long as I get revenge, I don't care who it is. You destroyed my life, now I'm going to destroy yours." What? No, Dad!" I cried, running towards him. But then that familiar chemical smell assaulted my senses, and I started to collapse before I could reach him. His horrified, grief-stricken face was the last thing I saw before everything went dark. The next time I opened my eyes, I was back in the cabin in the middle of nowhere. This time, only 3 of us woke up. Dad had disappeared. We didn't know where he was or what had happened to him. Only that he was gone, and he wasn't coming back. It started with a simple update. I got a notification on my phone telling me that my WhatsApp application wasn't up to date and needed updating to the latest version before I could continue using it. Thinking nothing of it, I went ahead and accepted, letting it update while my phone was on charge. I didn't bother checking the new settings or privacy terms, assuming nothing much would have changed except for a few bug fixes or added features. A couple of days after I had updated the app, I was sitting at home, scrolling through social media when I got a new WhatsApp message. It was from an unknown number. I was very careful about who I handed my number out to, especially businesses who might sell it off, so I rarely received calls or messages from unknown IDs, especially on WhatsApp, which is why I thought it was odd. I pulled up the app on my phone and checked the message. As expected, it was just spam. Some company trying to rope me into clicking on a link I definitely shouldn't click on. I deleted the message immediately and thought nothing else of it, though I did find myself wondering where they could have gotten my number from, given the precautions I normally took. That wasn't the last message I received from an unknown source. Later that afternoon, my phone pinged with another one, this time from a different unknown number. Another spam message that went straight into the deleted folder. I tried to ignore it and assume it was just an annoying coincidence, but it bothered me that WhatsApp's privacy settings must have become more lenient as to who they let contact me against my wishes. I checked my settings but couldn't see an option to prevent unknown numbers from contacting me, so I simply hoped that that was the last of it. Over the next few days, however, my phone kept getting spammed with scam messages and links from contacts I'd never heard of, and it became obvious my number had been sold off to these companies. The only thing that had changed recently was the WhatsApp update, something I now seriously regretted agreeing to. I was annoyed, but there wasn't a lot I could do without deleting the app altogether, which I wanted to avoid since it was the only way I could keep in contact with some people. About a week after the update, I received a message unlike any of the others that had slipped into my inbox. It was another unknown number, but the message itself wasn't a business scam like the rest. It was one of those chain messages that I remembered seeing a lot back in high school. Kids messing around and pretending to spread curses and misfortune if you didn't forward a certain message to a certain number of people. If you don't send this message to 5 people in 5 days, the Twisted Man will get you. But that wasn't all. There was a picture too. When I first read the message, it hadn't loaded properly and came up as nothing but a blurred image of nothing. Then it loaded, and I almost dropped the phone. It was an image of a man, although creature might have been a more apt description, since nothing about it was completely human. Pale, waxen skin and deep-hooded eyes that seemed more like 2 polished pieces of coal. Its mouth was an open slit, the lips white and bloodless. But it wasn't the face that scared me so much as its body. The way it was twisted like that, with its loose skin and sinewy muscle, its crooked neck and long dangly limbs that reminded me far too much of an arachnid. I hastily clicked away from the message and the picture, feeling nausea grip my stomach. Now I was getting jump scared in a text? What the hell was wrong with people these days? What if I'd been a kid? Opening a message like that would have given me nightmares for years, probably. Curling my lip in annoyance, I deleted the message. It was nonsense anyway. The Twisted Man was just someone's Photoshop creation designed to scare and trick people. That's all chain messages did, prey on people's ignorance and naivety. I put the phone down and went about the rest of my day trying to get that horrible picture out of my head. Only I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I would glimpse that dark gaze and twisted body, like it was skulking around in the shadows of my mind. I forced myself to think of something else, but I could still feel it there, just lingering out of sight. I knew I was being silly and paranoid, but nothing I did would get that image out of my head. It was like my own brain was trying to torture me with the creepiness of it. By the time the sky outside had begun to darken, I was already starting to forget about the chain message and the image of the Twisted Man. I sat down in the living room and reached for the television remote, hoping to relax with some program. In the split second before the TV screen flickered to life, I glimpsed something standing behind me in the reflection. Something with deep, hooded eyes and a twisted body. With a start, I staggered to my feet and turned around, expecting to see the Twisted Man standing behind me, like it had in the reflection. But there was nothing there. My heart thundered in my chest, the sound of my own pulse drowning out the noise from the television. What the hell? Had I just imagined that? I must have. There was no way the Twisted Man had actually been standing behind me because it wasn't real. It was just some stupid prank. If you don't send this message to 5 people in 5 days, the Twisted Man will get you. The message flashed up in my mind again, but I just as quickly dismissed it. It wasn't real, so why was I getting so hung up over it? When my heart had finally calmed down again, I checked behind the sofa and the rest of the house, just to be sure. But there really was nothing, or nobody there. It was all in my head. Even knowing that, however, wasn't enough to get it out of my head. When I went to sleep that night, I kept waking up thinking that the Twisted Man was somewhere in my room watching me sleep. Which I knew was impossible and made no sense, but it was a feeling I couldn't seem to shake off, no matter what I did. At one point, when I awoke in the early hours and the room was still dark, I thought I glimpsed a shadow standing, 2 coal black eyes watching me. But when I turned my light on to check, there was nothing there at all. 3 days after I received the chain message, things got a bit too much. I was in the bathroom one night, brushing my teeth before I went to bed. I bent down to spit and rinse my mouth, and when I stood back up again, I saw something in the mirror. It was a sticky note with a picture of the Twisted Man. It read, "If you don't send the message to 5 people, the Twisted Man will get you." My whole body started to shake with fear. I was too scared to even leave the bathroom for a good 10 minutes. It was all real, and I had less than 2 days before he came for me. Even though my brain knew the Twisted Man couldn't be real, the fear that I felt was. I mean, someone was definitely behind this Twisted Man shit, and they knew where I lived. I couldn't keep going on like this, terrified that the Twisted Man would be lurking around every corner, waiting for me. When I finally worked up the courage to leave the bathroom, I grabbed my phone where I'd left it on my bed and forwarded that stupid message to 5 of my close friends. Then I put the phone down and let out a heavy sigh of relief, feeling like a burden had been lifted from my shoulders. After that, I never encountered anything strange. Though, every so often, I still dreamt about him and wondered what might have happened if I didn't forward that message.